by Mr. Simon Fox, who is BFB co-founder and design director. Simon Fox.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation as well. It's a real privilege to be standing in front of you and speaking today, and thank you for your time and your attention. So you may have been told, perhaps by somebody who looked a little bit like me, that apps and digital health are going to be the future of providing healthcare. So it is in fact the case that there are nearly 300,000 health apps available today on various app stores, but less than 1% of those have any evidence at all that supports their efficacy. In fact, a recent meta-analysis of 700 apps purporting to deal with mental health conditions as behavioral health interventions, only one single one of them had any evidence collected supporting its health. And meta-analysis of 500 apps dealing with physical health conditions, again, only had one meta-analysis conducted supporting the idea that they were going to be in any way effective. So it is clear that health provision is changing very quickly, but a critical shortfall of evidence means that providers are unable to procure innovation without putting people at risk. And this model that is dominated for a very long time in the provision of healthcare, where one clinician will see one patient and refer them on to do the same again, is clearly unable to scale to meet demands on modern healthcare systems, but the innovation that is coming in to support and replace that model is not yet up to the task of doing so without fundamentally putting patients at risk. So why is clinical rigor so rare in this space? Well, as I'm sure I don't need to tell everybody, it is because clinical trials are extremely expensive to perform. They're extremely complicated, they're extremely time-consuming. The average cost of a clinical trial in the UK is about £1 million. Obviously, that number can escalate considerably north of that. One of our partners in the NHS recently pulled together £1.6 million to conduct a trial into a mental health intervention. The cost per participant in that trial is £7,500, so it's just over 200 participants, £1.6 million. The average duration of an RCT from formulating your question to publishing a result is 7 years. So this is a process that is incredibly difficult to find people who will invest in, and it is a process where the tools and methodologies and processes by which this research these researches are conducted are very resistant to change, but they are out of date. So our technology makes medical trials faster and cheaper to run. And we do this by taking data directly from intervention users sent via either worn sensors or simply naturalistic use of their devices. That data is collected and analyzed instantly in a central platform, which returns meaningful health intelligence to the people who are running these trials, who are our customers. Now, my company has created several of its own digital health interventions, and in doing so, we've run our own randomized controlled trials, and we have our own published research, and it's in doing this that we have come to learn that the budgets that are being raised to run research and clinical trials are being raised to solve a very familiar set of problems time and time again, and quite often money is being spent on creating solutions to these problems time and time again. So we know, for instance, that one of the most difficult things in research is keeping your participants engaged. Most studies show less than 25% engagement rate from their participants. This is particularly galling given the time, effort, and expenditure that goes into recruiting those participants in the first place. We know that of course, the mainstay of any trial is the collection of data. You need to find a physical space and equipment. You need to pay your participants to attend. You are, of course, limited then by the geography of your facilities, which means that often the most vulnerable people, the people who are those who you most wish to collect data from, could be excluded. And you have now an unnatural environment, which is skewing the data that you're collecting. And we know, of course, that once that data is collected, it requires then analyzing. Often that is an expensive outsourced piece of expertise, but either way, it takes a lot of time. The data is then often coded by hand and sits offline in perhaps an access database up for a period perhaps of years where it will do nothing for anybody. And all of this process, this whole rigmarole has to be repeated every time you want a window into the data that you are interested in. So that might be 10 minutes of data, that might be an hour of data, and you might pay £200,000 for those 10 minutes of data or that hour of data. So, we are tool builders, and so it made sense to us to start building tools that made this process more efficient. So we know that when you engage participants naturalistically through their own devices, you can show a much higher engagement rate. In one of our own studies, it was as high as 67%. We deal with data from worn sensors day in, day out. It's our bread and butter. And so to us, it just makes intuitive sense that data should be continuously and naturalistically collected, either through worn sensors or, as I say, through naturalistic use, through the participant's own use of their device, through which we can collect a number of different measures. And of course, that data should arrive already clean, already ready for analysis. And that analysis should be performed instantaneously at the touch of a button. And so this window of data, this £200,000 10-minute window of data should be a 24/7 window of data, should be continuously open. So we are right now raising around 600 grand. We're closing it in January 2018. We've raised nearly 60% of that. Of course, I'm interested in having conversations about that, but actually far more interested today in having conversations about our pilot program. We are looking for partners to trial this technology with real clinical trials in your services, and I'd be delighted to speak about it today with anybody who's here. I think that Pakistan has a wonderful opportunity at the moment to, in many ways, do things that are more technologically capable and able than institutions like the NHS that are very resistant to change. So thanks very much for your time.